Well, today is an important day in this country for other reasons as well, and for countries around the world formerly part of the British Empire. August 1st, Emancipation Day. Today marks the day 187 years ago that the Slavery Abolition Act came into effect. Earlier this year, Canada officially recognized August 1st as Emancipation Day in this country. My next guest has been pushing for years for federal recognition of Emancipation Day. Wanda Thomas Bernard is a senator from Nova Scotia, and we've reached her in beautiful East Preston, Nova Scotia. Senator Bernard, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to talk to us.
Good morning. Thank you for this opportunity.
It's our pleasure. Let's start by asking you why it is so important for you to have this day recognized.
It's important to have this day recognized across the country because it's Canada basically changing its narrative and acknowledging this full history. Prior to this, Canadian history and the teaching of Black history focused primarily on the Underground Railroad. By acknowledging Emancipation Day, in essence, it's acknowledging that slavery also existed in this country. And furthermore, it is indeed the institution of slavery and the enslavement of African people that laid the roots, the foundation, if you will, for the anti-Black racism, the systemic racism and inequality that we are still dealing with even today.
Abolished August 1st, 1834, so really only 30 years or so before slavery was abolished in the United States. Why do you think it's taken so long for people in this country to understand this important aspect of our history?
Part of the reason is that the history has not been taught. And if we don't tell the history, if we don't teach the history, then people won't know the history. So I don't blame individuals for not knowing that history. It's really the educational institutions that have not provided that information to people. However, now that Emancipation Day is formally recognized, it means that across this country, people will have to learn, have to move forward with this full history. And one of the things that I'm certainly hoping will come from this is that there will be an acknowledgement, truly, that Black history is indeed Canadian history, and that we integrate Black history into our daily lives, daily operations, all year long, and not just during Black History Month, which is in February.
There has certainly been more than a year of social upheaval, of protest, and of new awareness of histories and shared histories, particularly when it comes to Black citizens of the United States and of Canada. But can I ask you, Senator, why you think things have finally started to change?
I do believe that the pandemic of COVID collided with the pandemic of racism following the murder of George Floyd, which people were witnessing over and over and over. It was such a horrific act of state violence that it became impossible for anyone who watched that, anyone who heard about it, anyone who read about it, surely could no longer deny the reality of anti-Black racism. Around the world, it became a global awakening. So as a part of that global awakening, of course, there was more awareness created here in Canada as well.
Can I ask for a little bit of advice for some of us in terms of Canadians and how you'd like to see us, all of us, mark this day and perhaps be able to take part in it and to learn from it?
Part of the learning is creating opportunities for ongoing learning. So the day is just that, it's a day. But I hope that the mission takes all of us beyond the day to really think about what more do I need to learn here? And there are so many resources. There are so many resources that tell a fuller story about the presence of Black people in this country, about the contribution of Black people in this country. And as people are marking the day from coast to coast to coast, there are so many opportunities, many virtual opportunities, many resources available online. People can learn, people can open themselves up to understand it. But more importantly, I want to encourage people across the country to think about actions, to think about individual actions, personal, professional actions. What can we do in our professional lives? Political actions. What do we need politicians to do? Reparations. We need to think about reparations. There have been no true reparations across the board for Africans who were enslaved. We need to have that understanding that the slave owners received compensation, which are a form of reparations. African people have not. We've not received an apology. So I want people from coast to coast to coast to be thinking about, okay, so what do I do? What can I do? Part of what everyone can do is to learn more. Part of what everyone can do is to engage in the conversations, teaching the next generation. Part of what every parent can do is encourage these conversations in their homes, but also encourage this teaching in the school system.
You make an excellent point, Senator, when you point out that the slave owners were compensated, that the freedom was declared, but then the slave owners were paid, and that taxpayers paid and continue to pay for decades after the Emancipation Day itself. So you have the irony of people who were Black paying taxes that resulted in the slave owners being compensated, quote unquote, for freeing them. But I do want to ask you, you strike me as someone who probably has young people in your life, and certainly listening to you talk, I think they're lucky to have you. But is the narrative that you're able to tell young people in your life now different from the narrative that you grew up with? And if so, how?
I'm fortunate to have grown up during the Civil Rights era. And part of my education was about civil rights, was about anti-Black racism. And I take it as a responsibility to have those same conversations with young people. Yes, I'm fortunate to have young people in my life. I have 2 grandsons, but I also try to spend as much time as I can with young people. The Senate has a program called Cengage, and through that program, we go into schools, go meet with community groups, meet with students in post-secondary, and at every opportunity, I try to do some education about Black history in Canada beyond February.
Senator, one final question for you. May I ask, how you'll be marking today?
Well, I am going on a walk very shortly, a Black Lives Matter walk that's been organized by some community folks. And it's a walk that highlights the reality that we're in this together. People have been encouraged to walk in their communities wherever they are. They've been encouraged to walk with allies, so I'll be doing that. There's a barbecue at the Kuma Family Center this morning. That's a residence for children who are in out-of-home care. I'll be attending that barbecue, and I'll be attending that with my spouse and my grandsons. And we volunteered. We volunteered to help do a cleanup after the barbecue, because part of what I want to teach my grandchildren is the responsibility of giving back, of being engaged in our communities. And then this evening, the Halifax City is organizing a variety event organized by Halifax City and a group of young people called Game Changers 902. I'll be speaking at that event for them. That's just some of the things that I'll be doing today. And then I'll try to find a bit of time today to mark this birthday that I'm also celebrating on this day.
Senator Bernard, I want to thank you for your time. It sounds like you have a full day, but even just the brief time we've spent together, I get the impression most of your days are pretty full. So I want to thank you again for your time, and do have a wonderful Emancipation Day. Thank you again.
Thank you very much.
Senator Wanda Thomas Bernard joining us from East Preston, Nova Scotia.